Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing good and having a wonderful day. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most interesting SQL injection that I found recently while doing a private pen test. Okay, that particular pen test had some of the very interesting web application firewall deployed that I have seen, and it was very interesting that how the vulnerability was still there despite being had that much of security, right? So that's what we're going to see in this particular video. But before going to that, if you haven't checked out my previous video, then go ahead and check it out. The link is given in the description, as well as you can see it at the right side of the screen. And now, with that being said, let us get started. Okay, so before diving deep into this video, let me just quickly show you the source code because I think that's going to be necessary for this particular video. So in the case where I found this particular vulnerability, they were relying on blacklist. Okay, so there are certain keywords which are like completely blocked, and I have, for example, added one of these keywords over here, but there were a lot of keywords. For example, I think there were around when we requested the client for the source code, we saw that there were around 100 to 200 keywords that are blocked, and all of them were the main keywords for SQL query. Okay, that made it very difficult, so we had to come up with a bypass that is not present in that particular blacklist, and it was looking something like this. Like if you see over here, you see the comment is blocked, basic keywords like select, union, where, from, and block, and a lot of other keywords. Like in that scenario, wait for delay was blocked, sleep was blocked, benchmark was blocked, and all the common keywords that you can think of was actually blocked. And on top of that, there was a web application firewall. I think it was deployed by Amazon or Microsoft, I can't remember it actually, but that was there as well. So there were this blacklist, and on top of that there was this particular firewall as well. Okay, and this was kind of the configuration which was there in that particular application. I hope you guys have understood it. Now let's try to go ahead and see through a practical demonstration that what the application looked like and how I attempted to find a SQL injection vulnerability. Okay, so as you can see, we are at the application right now, and obviously for the sake of demonstration, this is not the real application which I obviously tested on. This is a different application, but it is replicating the exact vulnerability that I found on the private pen test. Okay, so let's try to quickly go ahead and understand what the issue was. Okay, so if you can take a closer look here, we can see we have multiple options here. So we're simply going to go ahead and click on orders. The moment you are in orders, what you need to do is, as you can see, the example is given, but in the real world scenario, I was getting a lot of orders and I just clicked one of them and it was very much similar to this. Okay, so I'm going to use one of these orders. For example, let's copy this here, and then let's copy the date, okay, and paste it right over here, and let's click on search orders. Wait for a few seconds, and as you can see, we are successfully able to retrieve the order. And we all know that, like, if you are very new to SQL injection, then you should know that always test the target which is directly or indirectly interacting with the database, I mean the functionality. Okay, for example, here the order functionality is directly interacting with the database because upon giving some user input by us, we can see some data, right, which is stored in the database. Now the second thing that we need to do over here is that once I've identified this, I try to use, like, for example, a single quote in the order as well as in the date input field. Let's try to use one of them. Okay, you can see the moment I did this order, I've got this particular message, unexpected backend parsing issue. Let's remove this. Let's try to put it here. Okay, again you can see we are getting this issue. In the real world scenario, I was getting an internal server error, okay, which is also very interesting because I was not seeing any message, but it was redirected to this issue which was internal server error. Okay, now this doesn't confirm that, I mean, if you're getting this kind of error, this doesn't confirm actually that whether this particular application is vulnerable to SQL injection or not. So what you need to do is, if for example using a single quote gave you some error, like anything, like for example unexpected error here, so what you need to do is you can try to see whether you can use the comment out SQL syntax, right, which is this minus minus plus. Okay, and if you click on search order again, you can see the request is blocked by automated security policy. So when this happened, automatically, if you are a beginner or if you are an intermediate level penetration tester, you will assume that since this comment is blocked and we cannot even comment the query, there is a high possibility that this application might not be vulnerable to SQL injection. right? And that's the case over here. So if you're thinking something like this, that if you are unable to comment out the things, we won't be able to do anything, there is also an alternate way which I tried, which actually worked in my case. That if you are doing something like this, just after a single quote, append another single quote and see how the application is behaving. Is it giving you a normal response, or is it giving you the same error? If there's any changes in the response, and if you're getting some kind of data, then it confirms that there is a high possibility of SQL injection. Okay, now let's go ahead and click on search orders, and you can see this time we didn't got any errors, right? This time we didn't got the error as the error we got before, or this parsing error, right? Which means that this particular request was somehow accepted by the application, right? Now once I confirm this, the next thing is to validate whether this particular application is actually vulnerable or not, right? So if you are doing a manual pen test, like you can go ahead and try this with SQL map or something, but it won't be able to find the exact vulnerability over here because a lot of things are blocked, right? So we have to use our manual approach. Now we know that if we use double single quote, it's working fine. Let's append another single quote and it should give us some error. And yeah, here you can see it is giving an error, because in SQL this double quote means a complete string. If you use a single quote, then it's basically breaking the string, right? So from this we can confirm that a single quote is being used and our input is wrapped around a single quote. That's why this is working. And if we, let's say, append 4 single quote, it should work again. Okay, you can see it's working again without any issues. And if we do 5, you'll see that we're getting error again. So this confirms that this application is vulnerable to SQL injection. But you cannot write a report out of this directly. You need to show at least some kind of proof, or you need to show that okay, you can execute some query, right? So what we can do here is, and we also know this one important thing, that the comment is blocked, and a lot of keyword like select, if you do select and everything, it is blocked, right? So we need to come up with a payload which is actually very unique. So what we can do is, after this we can try, let's say, or, okay, and we'll do 1 equals to 1. Let's click on search orders, and we all know that this keyword is blocked as well. That's why we are giving this error. Okay, so what we can do over here is that instead of using this traditional payload, you can try to use something very interesting, which is or AB like AB, which is very equivalent to 1 equals to 1 or 2 equals to 1. So basically it means that if this condition or this condition is true, then the SQL query is going to be executed and we should see the data retrieved. Click on search, and you'll notice this time the error is different. This time the error is not about the request getting blocked by the automated security policy, but instead it is about unexpected backend parsing issue, right? This confirms that we are very close. Now, once I identified this, the next thing was to balance out the payload, right? And we obviously knew that the payload is wrapped around, or the input is wrapped around single quote, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to remove this single quote, because from what I have understood from the application, the input is looking something like this. Let me just show you right over here. Select order from something like this, order ID, right? Or the date that we were giving, right? Which can be this. This is the date we're giving, right? So it is something like this, right? And what we want to do is we want to execute an SQL query that should give us a proof of concept that this application is vulnerable to SQL injection. Okay, so what we can do is we can try to use a single quote here, and we'll try or, then AB like, and with just a single quote we'll try to balance out the payload. So the final payloads become something like this. Let me just copy it from here and paste it here, right? So the final payload will look something like this, because we know that the input is wrapped around in single quotes already. So if we leave this AB with just a single quote, the second single quote which is already there into the query will balance it out, And if we now go ahead and click on search orders, you can see that we are successfully able to retrieve the data which confirm that there is a SQL injection vulnerability, right? We can simply go ahead and remove AB with something else to confirm whether it is vulnerable or not. Or, in this particular scenario, this AB is not equals to BA, right? So we shouldn't be able to see the data. Let's click on search, and we are still seeing the data because we are using the OR operator. If we remove this and do AND, because in OR, either this condition needs to be true or this condition needs to be true, you know. So obviously this condition is true, but this condition was false, but the net result will be true because we were using or operator, right? But here when we are using and if we click on search, you see we're not seeing any data because in and operator both of these query needs to be true. To confirm that, we can type AB again, and you can see we are successfully seeing the data, right? And this is how I was able to find this particular SQL injection on the application. This particular payload helped me to bypass not only the blacklist as well as the firewall that they were using on top of it, you know. From what I think, it's mainly because this particular payload is something that not many people use on the internet. You know, they go with traditional payload like 1 = 1, sleep, and all those things. But if you do a little more research about SQL queries, and if you know how to build an SQL query, there's a high possibility you can come up with very unique payloads in case they're using a blacklist, right? Now, if you're someone who wants to know that how we can fix this issue, it's very simple. You don't need to use blacklist or whitelist. Just try to use prepared statements and always sanitize user input. If you do these two things, you won't be needing to use a blacklist or a whitelist to prevent SQL injection on your application. It's as simple as that. I hope you guys have understood how I was able to exploit it. Now, obviously, in the real world scenario, I was not able to exploit it to the point where I was able to like pull the database information and all. The reason being is that the application was heavily blacklisting all the keywords, you know. But if you're someone who can think that you'll be able to enumerate database, feel free to let me know in the comment section as well, so that we can see how it's possible, you know. But in my case, I was not able to go beyond this. So this was the actual conclusion that I came up to, that okay, this application is vulnerable. And in the real world scenario, I was getting not only single data but a lot of other users data as well, you know. So that was like considered as a high severity vulnerability. So yeah, this is mainly it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any doubts, if you have any issues, feel free to let me know your doubts or issues in the comment section. And now, with that being said, keep learning, keep hacking, and thank you so much for watching this video.